بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه. اللهم ربنا أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي ربنا زدنا علما وعملا وإخلاصا يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر أولياءك في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم انصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم فرج عنا وعن إخواننا في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم نفس كربنا وكربنا وثبت أقدامنا وأقدامهم والطف بنا وبهم يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين. وصل وسلم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Okay, we are here somewhere, continuing our reading of Reconstruction. So, Russell's answer to Zeno is as follows. So, as we said last time, this is not a quote from Russell, it's a quote from Wilden Carr. So basically, Wilden Carr is describing Russell's position. So Zeno asks, how can you go from one position at one moment to the next position at the next moment without the transition being at no position and at no moment? So these comments presuppose so this is one version of Zeno's paradox, where you focus on the discrete nature of the points and the gap between them. So the answer is that there is no next position to any position, no next moment to any moment, because between any two there is always another, so there is a continuum. If there were infinitesimals, movement would be impossible. As Zeno's paradoxes demonstrate, apparently. So if there were infinitesimals, movement would be impossible because there would be a gap between 2 points then. A belief in infinitesimal leads to or implies points are discrete. They're not continuous. So the space is made of discrete points and not continuum. If there were infinitesimals, movement would be impossible, but there are none, according to Cantor. Zeno, therefore, is right in saying that the arrow is at rest at every moment of the flight, wrong in inferring that therefore it does not move, but there is one-to-one correspondence in a movement between an infinite series of position and the infinite series of instants. It's moving, but since there's no gap between two positions, literally speaking, um, the arrow is at rest. I don't know how accurate this is if we, if we apply calculus to it, for example. According to this doctrine, then it is possible to affirm the reality of space, time, and movement, and yet avoid the paradox of Zeno's argument. Um, Affirm the reality of space, time, and movement. So space is real, time is real, movement is real. Space is made up of continuum, time is continuum, and movement is continuum in that sense. So there's no paradox because there are no 2 points to cross in a sense. Okay. Now this is equal. Thus, Bertrand Russell proves the reality of movement on the basis of Cantor's theory of continuity. I don't know whether this is true. You would have to look at Russell's scholarship carefully. But before that, it's not that Russell is proving the reality of movement. He's analyzing the movement. Movement, if it is real or not, it is there. So it's more an analysis. So these contradictions are essentially contradictions of your logical and rational assumptions. The actuality is not affected by your analysis. Your perception of it might. So I think this is a ongoing confusion, I think, because it seems as if Iqbal is saying that Zeno actually proved the impossibility. So Zeno's paradoxes, what they do. Zeno's paradoxes are based on logical analysis of the relationship between our view of space and time and motion, and given our assumptions about, for example, Euclidean, Aristotelian assumptions about space, time, and motion. Zeno's paradoxes prove that motion combined with assumptions about space and time lead to paradoxes. So what he's analyzing is the relationship between our assumptions about space, time, and motion. Whether those paradoxes are proven or unproven, they don't affect the actual facts, whether there's a motion or not, there's a movement or not. So I think that's important. That's important to remember. And the second thing is, it's not clear whether Russell actually proved the reality of movement, even in the sense in which we are granting that you can prove or unprove or disprove the movement and its reality. I think the reality of movement means the independent reality of space and the objectivity of nature. We'll come back to that. That doesn't seem correct entirely. But let's look at Russell first. So I've been looking at this article on Russell's paradoxes, and I just wanted to read a passage from it, just to show that it's not correct to claim that Russell somehow, as Iqbal is doing here, somehow proved the reality of movement on the basis of Cantor's theory of continuity. And one of the things this author says here is that Russell's claim that Cantor's theory of infinity solves Zeno's paradoxes, in his most mature discussion of the two paradoxes, Russell, in his most mature discussion of two paradoxes, that is Zeno's paradoxes, Russell does not actually go beyond Aristotle's traditional solutions. In particular, he does not appeal to an actual infinity, as we would expect given Russell's focus on Cantor. Combined with the fact that Russell has non-standard interpretation of the, by non-standard he means ahistorical, mostly mathematical, non-standard interpretation of the dichotomy, the paradox of dichotomy, and Achilles and his problem of human knowledge, I think that's what it's referring to, or principle of mathematics, principle of mathematics. This lead to the conclusion that Russell, so that's the important thing, never provided a solution to Zeno's paradoxes of motion that lived up to his claims. So that's my main argument is as follows in this paper. When Russell uses modern mathematics to resolve Zeno's paradoxes, his targets are not Zeno's actual arguments. Okay. And when Russell accurately interprets Zeno's argument, he does not appeal to modern mathematics, with the exception of arrow argument. Thus, Russell claimed that Cantor's theory of infinite sets is necessary to address Zeno's paradoxes is not witnessed in Russell's own work. So it may or may not solve the paradox, but Russell himself actually doesn't do that. So I just wanted to mention this. Okay, let's go back to Iqbal. Okay, going back to Russell, Iqbal, Bertrand Russell proves the reality of movement on the basis of Cantor's theory of continuity. The reality of movement means the independent, not his own. The reality of movement means the independent reality of space and the objectivity of nature. That's almost like a tautology. Let's try to decipher this a bit if possible. Now, I think the reality of movement, reality of the movement. Reality now can, as we say, be contrasted with illusion. It can be contrasted with ideality. And Iqbal has been saying that the reality of movement requires independent space. Depending on your notion of space. And here he seems to mean that by space what Mutakallimin meant, basically empty al-faragh, or what we call al-faragh in Arabic, emptiness. And probably, so if I want to go from one point to another, there must be empty room between these points. So if there is no room, so that space is supposed to be a room, emptiness, and it has to be. I don't know why it needs to be independent. Well, independent in the sense that independent of the objects, I guess. Because if we, that's I'm trying to think, from Atomic Ball's viewpoint. So if you have a relative space, like where space is just a relationship between matter, then probably space is not independent according to Atomic Ball. But that's not necessarily true. Space doesn't have to be a thing in Newtonian sense, for example, for it to be independent. It's possible that these are two bodies and there's a lot of emptiness in between them. And emptiness in the sense that there's a matter and energy, but the matter is dispersed, it's not solid, I guess. So there's enough space between roaming between neutron and electrons, etc. For this body to move from here to here. So doesn't need to be a thing if by independently means. So relative space, if we call a space this space, the room between these two bodies, that can be an independent space, even though it's not independent in the sense that it exists. It exists without matter, for example, or without things. So if all matter is taken out, there might not be any space. So in that sense, space is not independent. So what I'm saying is, you don't need independent space in Iqbal's sense, or at least what he's implying. And it's not clear what does he mean by reality, because if he mean by reality objectivity, then that's fine. But if he means by reality necessarily non-ideality, might not be necessarily true. I don't know. And you don't need independent reality of space. Okay, independent reality, independent of what? Independent of object, independent of observer. And you need objectivity of nature, like nature is not an illusion. It's not clear what he means by objectivity of nature. It's not a creation of, it's not an illusion. It's independent of my imagination. Okay, so is that what he means by objectivity, or by objectivity he means that it is material, for example? Which I don't think he means it is necessarily material. He doesn't even recognize that we have seen already the absolute distinction between matter and mind, or matter or spirit. So it's not clear what he means here. Okay. And then he goes on to criticize Russell, I think. Here. He critiques Russell's assumed so-called solution which is presented here. But the identity of continuity and the infinite divisibility of space is no solution of this difficulty. So we'll continue from here inshallah next time. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. وصلى وسلم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم على سيدنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.